Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the stars shimmer through the main window. After 6 months of traveling through deep space, his crew had finally reached the coordinates given to them by Earth Command. Somewhere in this sector of space, they would make first contact with an alien civilization that had been sending signals toward Earth for the past 3 years. "Commander, I'm picking up a massive structure on the long-range sensors," called out Communications Officer Danny Foster from his station. "It's bigger than anything we've ever built." Jake walked over to look at the display screen. What he saw made him stop and stare. A space station the size of a small moon hung in the darkness ahead of them. Lights blinked along its surface in patterns that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Ships of strange designs moved around it like insects around a flower. "My God," whispered Dr. Lisa Warren, the ship's head scientist. She had joined Jake at the viewing screen. "Look at the size of that thing. How many people do you think live there?" "I don't know," Jake replied. "But we're about to find out. Danny, open a channel on all frequencies. Let them know we're here." Danny's fingers moved quickly over his controls. "Channel open, sir." Jake straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge. We come in peace and wish to make contact with your people." For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the main screen flickered and showed a face that was clearly not human. The being had smooth blue skin that seemed to be made of crystal. Its eyes were large and silver, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like music. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the being said. "I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Velthari people. We have been waiting for your arrival. Welcome to Nexus Station, the heart of the Galactic Alliance." Jake felt his heart racing. The Galactic Alliance. That meant there were more alien species than just the Velthari. "Thank you for welcoming us, Ambassador. We're honored to meet you and your people." "The honor is ours, Commander Morrison. Your species has been the subject of much curiosity among the Alliance races. We would like to invite you and your senior staff to visit our station. There is much we wish to discuss." 2 hours later, Jake found himself walking through corridors that defied everything he thought he knew about architecture. The walls curved in impossible ways, and gravity seemed to work differently in different sections. With him were Dr. Warren, Security Chief Amanda Price, Engineer Ryan Bell, and Communications Officer Foster. Ambassador Zethkar led them through the station, explaining what they saw. Nexus Station is home to representatives from all 12 member races of the Galactic Alliance, he said. Each section is designed to accommodate the needs of different species. They passed through an area filled with water where fish-like beings swam through the air as if it were an ocean. In another section, creatures that looked like living shadows moved silently across the walls. Jake saw beings made of what appeared to be pure energy floating near the ceiling, and others that looked like walking trees. "How long has the Alliance existed?" Dr. Warren asked, her scientific curiosity clearly excited by everything she was seeing. "For over 10,000 of your Earth years," Zethkar replied. "We have achieved something that your species has not yet accomplished. We have ended war, eliminated poverty, and created perfect peace throughout our territories." Security Chief Price raised an eyebrow. "Perfect peace? How did you manage that?" Zethkar led them into a large chamber with a round table in the center. Representatives from different alien species sat around it, each one looking completely different from the others. "Please sit," Zethkar said. "I will explain." Jake and his team took seats at the table. The other aliens watched them with various types of eyes, some curious, others seemingly analyzing every move the humans made. "Each race in our alliance has found their purpose," Zethkar began. "The Kreeth, for example." He gestured to an insect-like being with 4 arms. "They discovered that logic and mathematics could solve any problem. They eliminated war by proving mathematically that cooperation always produces better results. Then conflict." The Kreeth representative clicked its mandibles in what might have been agreement. "Correct. We analyzed 1,847,293 possible conflict scenarios. In every case, logical cooperation produced superior outcomes for all parties involved." Zethkar continued. "The Nethmore achieved peace by sharing consciousness. He pointed to a being that seemed to be made of swirling gas. They eliminated individual desires that lead to conflict by thinking as one mind. The gaseous being spoke in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. We are no longer separate beings. We are one being in many forms. There can be no conflict when there is no separation. And the Skardan, Zethkar said, indicating a large reptilian creature, created perfect order through an unchanging social structure. Everyone knows their place and accepts it completely. The reptilian being nodded slowly. Our castes have remained the same for 6,000 years. There is no confusion, no ambition beyond one station, and therefore no conflict. Jake listened to each species describe their solution to the problems that still plagued humanity. War, crime, social unrest, economic inequality. Each alien race had found a way to eliminate these issues completely. That's fascinating, Dr. Warren said. But how does it work in practice? Don't you ever have disagreements about how to handle new situations? New situations are rare, Zethkar explained. When they do arise, each species contributes according to their specialty. The Kreeth provide logical analysis. The Softatel offer emotional understanding. The Aonki share historical perspective, and so on. Every species has their role, and every role is essential. Engineer Bell leaned forward. What about innovation? Scientific advancement? Art and culture? Each species handles the areas they are best suited for, Zethkar replied. The Velthari, my people, specialize in crystalline technology and harmonic communication. The Zixori manage biological systems. The Queltar focus on energy manipulation. Specialization eliminates inefficiency and conflict. Jake was beginning to understand what the ambassador was getting at. And where would humanity fit into this system? Zethkar's crystal features seemed to shimmer with uncertainty. That is what we must determine. Tell us, Commander Morrison, what is your species' specialization? What single trait defines humanity above all others? Jake looked around the table at his crew. This should have been an easy question to answer, but somehow it wasn't. Well, Jake began, we're explorers. That's why we're here. No, sir, interrupted Security Chief Price. We're warriors. Humans have been fighting and surviving against impossible odds since we first walked upright. Engineer Bell shook his head. You're both wrong. We're builders. Look at what we've accomplished on Earth. Cities, machines, spaceships. We build things. Dr. Warren smiled. Actually, I think we're learners. We never stop trying to understand how things work. We question everything. Communications Officer Foster spoke up. I'd say we're storytellers. Every human culture has stories, myths, legends. We define ourselves through the stories we tell. The aliens around the table looked confused. Some of them began speaking to each other in languages that sounded like music, clicking sounds or electronic beeps. Zethkar raised his hand for silence. This is unusual. Every species we have encountered can identify their primary characteristic immediately, the trait that defines them above all others. But you seem to claim multiple specializations. Maybe that's because we don't specialize, Jake said slowly, beginning to understand something important. Maybe humans are generalists. We do a little bit of everything. The confusion among the aliens grew stronger. Several of them stood up and began talking rapidly to each other. The Kreeth representative's mandibles clicked loudly. The gaseous Nethmore began swirling faster. Finally, Zethkar spoke again. This presents a significant problem, Commander Morrison. Our alliance has thrived for millennia because each species knows their role and stays within it. A species that refuses to specialize, that tries to do everything. He paused, seeming to search for the right words. Such a species could disrupt the balance we have worked so hard to maintain. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. What are you saying, Ambassador? I am saying that the Alliance Council must study your species carefully before we can determine whether humanity can join our civilization. Until then, you and your crew will remain here as our honored guests while we decide what to do with you. The way Zethkar said guests made Jake think they might actually be prisoners. He looked at his crew and saw the same concern in their eyes. They had come seeking friendship among the stars, but they might have found something very different. Instead, 3 months had passed since the humans arrived at Nexus Station. Commander Jake Morrison had grown tired of being watched everywhere he went. The aliens called them honored guests, but guests were usually free to leave when they wanted. The humans were not. Each day brought new alien observers who studied everything the humans did. They watched them eat, sleep, work, and talk to each other. They took notes on devices that looked like glowing crystals or floating metal spheres. Jake felt like an animal in a zoo. This morning was different. Ambassador Zethkar had announced that the Alliance Council would begin formal testing of human behavior. Different alien species would take turns studying specific aspects of humanity to determine if humans could fit into their civilization. The first test came from the Velthari, the crystal-skinned aliens who specialized in logic and reason. 3 Velthari scientists arrived in the human quarters carrying devices that hummed with soft musical tones. "Commander Morrison," said the lead scientist, whose name was Kethval, "we wish to observe your decision-making process. We will present you with various scenarios and record how you respond." Jake nodded. "All right. What kind of scenarios?" Kethval activated one of his devices, and a holographic display appeared showing a spaceship in distress. "Your vessel encounters an unknown alien craft that is damaged and losing life support. However, approaching it would put your ship and crew at significant risk. The logical choice is clear. What do you do?" Jake studied the display for a moment. "I'd try to help them." The 3 Velthari looked at each other, their crystal faces shimmering with what might have been confusion. "But the risk to your crew is 73.6% chance of serious damage to your vessel, with a 23.2% chance of total loss." "Those are just numbers," Jake replied. "There are people dying on that ship. We can't just leave them." Kethval made notes on his device. "Even though they are unknown aliens who might be hostile, even then, if someone needs help, you help them. That's what we do." The Velthari spent the rest of the day presenting similar scenarios. Each time, Jake made decisions that put compassion and moral duty ahead of logical risk assessment. The alien seemed increasingly disturbed by his responses. Later that day, another group arrived to study Dr. Lisa Warren and her research team. These were the Softatel, aliens who looked like tall, thin humanoids with large, dark eyes. They specialized in emotional understanding and had eliminated conflict by achieving perfect empathy. The Softatel leader, named Amphara, approached Dr. Warren with obvious nervousness. "We wish to observe your emotional responses to various stimuli. Our species has learned to maintain perfect emotional balance at all times." Dr. Warren looked up from her research notes. "Perfect balance? That sounds limiting." Amphara's large eyes widened. "Limiting, but we have eliminated all negative emotions. We feel only peace and contentment." "What about joy, excitement, love?" Dr. Warren asked. "Those emotions can lead to imbalance and conflict. We have moved beyond them." Dr. Warren shook her head. "I couldn't imagine living without those feelings. Yes, we feel sadness and anger sometimes, but we also feel incredible happiness and love. The good emotions make the difficult ones worth experiencing." As the day continued, the Softatel watched in growing alarm as the human research team displayed the full range of emotions. Dr. Warren became frustrated when an experiment didn't work, then excited when she found a solution. Her assistant, Tony Garcia, got angry during a disagreement with another team member, then laughed with the same person an hour later about something completely different. Engineer Ryan Bell had a heated argument with Katie Stone about the best way to modify some equipment. They raised their voices, gestured wildly, and seemed genuinely upset with each other. The Softatel observers began trembling, overwhelmed by the conflicting emotions. But then, 20 minutes later, Bell and Stone were working together perfectly to implement the modification they had argued about. They joked with each other and seemed to have completely forgotten their disagreement. "How is this possible?" Amphara asked Dr. Warren. "Your people were in conflict. experiencing anger and frustration. Now they appear to feel friendship and cooperation. These emotional states should not be able to exist in the same beings. Dr. Warren smiled. That's just how we are. We can disagree about something and still like each other. We can feel multiple emotions about the same situation. I can be worried about this mission and excited about it at the same time. The Softatel looked like they were in physical pain trying to understand this concept. They left early, saying they needed to recover from the emotional strain of observing human behavior. The third group to study the humans was the strangest yet. The Zixori were a hive-minded species that looked like large, six-legged creatures with multiple eyes. They moved in perfect coordination and spoke in unison with dozens of voices. "We are here to study your social structure," they announced. "Every species has a clear hierarchy that determines decision-making authority. We will observe your chain of command." Security Chief Amanda Price was in the middle of a training exercise with several crew members when the Zixori arrived. She was clearly in charge, giving orders and directing the activity. The aliens took notes, seeming satisfied that they understood human hierarchy. Then an emergency alarm sounded. There was a problem in the engineering section, a coolant leak that could damage critical systems. Immediately, everyone looked to Engineer Bell for direction, even though Price outranked him in the ship's command structure. "Bell, what do you need?" Price asked. "I need Pete Barnes and Sam Mitchell to shut down the secondary systems while Danny Foster reroutes power from the backup generators," Bell said quickly. Without hesitation, everyone followed Bell's orders, including Price. The Zixori watched, in confusion as the human hierarchy suddenly shifted. An hour later, Dr. Warren needed to make a decision about whether it was safe to continue some experiments near the damaged area. Again, the humans all deferred to her expertise, even though she was junior to both Price and Bell in the official command structure. "This makes no sense," the Zixori said with their multiple voices. "Your social structure changes depending on the situation. How do you maintain order? How do you prevent chaos?" Communications Officer Foster tried to explain. "We follow whoever knows the most about the current problem. In a fight, we listen to Amanda because she's our security expert. For technical problems, we listen to Ryan. For medical issues, we follow Tony or Dr. Warren. It's not complicated. But authority must be fixed and permanent," the Zixori insisted. "Otherwise, there will be constant conflict over who leads." "Why? Would we fight about it?" Pete Barnes asked. "If I know more about engines than Amanda, she's smart enough to let me handle engine problems. If she knows more about security than I do, I'm smart enough to let her handle security issues." The Zixori spent 3 days observing the humans growing more confused each day. They watched the command structure shift fluidly dozens of times. Sometimes Jake Morrison was clearly in charge. Other times, crew members made decisions independently, without asking permission. Occasionally, the lowest-ranking person in a group would take the lead if they had the most relevant knowledge. "Your social structure is chaos," the Zixori finally declared. "No species can function with such inconsistent hierarchy. Yet somehow you do function. This should not be possible." By the end of the week, representatives from all 3 alien species met with Ambassador Zethkar to discuss their findings. Jake and his senior staff were called to hear the results. "The reports are troubling," Zethkar said, his crystal features dim with concern. "The Velthari report that humans make decisions based on emotion rather than logic, even when those decisions are clearly irrational. The Softatel report that humans experience contradictory emotions simultaneously, which should cause mental breakdown but somehow does not," he continued. "And the Zixori report that human social structure is anarchic and unstable, yet produces effective cooperation," Zethkar finished. Jake looked at his crew, then back at the ambassador. "So what's the problem? We get things done, don't we?" "That is precisely the problem, Commander Morrison," Zethkar replied. "Every species in the Alliance succeeded by eliminating the contradictions and chaos that you seem to embrace. You should not be able to function as a society, yet you do. You should not be able to make good decisions while ignoring logic, yet you do. You should not be able to maintain order without fixed hierarchy, yet you do. Dr. Warren leaned forward. Maybe the problem isn't with us. Maybe the problem is with your assumptions about how intelligent species should behave. The silence that followed her words was uncomfortable. Finally, Zethkar spoke again. The Alliance Council will need more time to study your species. These initial observations have raised questions that we did not expect to face. You will remain here while we determine what to do next. As the aliens left, Jake turned to his crew. I get the feeling we're not going to like their final decision. No, Security Chief Price agreed. I don't think we are. The meeting room was darker than usual when Alliance historian Quindar entered. The ancient Aonki moved slowly, his pale skin showing the weight of his 15,000 years of life. His species lived longer than any other in the Alliance, which made them the keepers of galactic history. Commander Jake Morrison and his senior staff had been summoned to hear what Quindar had discovered about humanity's place in the galaxy. Dr. Lisa Warren sat forward in her chair, eager to learn more about galactic history. Security Chief Amanda Price kept her hand near her weapon, though she knew it would be useless against the advanced aliens. Humans of Earth, Quindar began, his voice dry and ancient. What I am about to tell you has been kept secret from most Alliance members for thousands of years. Only the Council of Historians and the highest leadership know the full truth. Ambassador Zethkar stood beside the old historian, his crystal features flickering nervously. Quindar believes you have the right to know about others who came before you. Jake felt a cold sensation in his stomach. Others? Quindar activated a holographic display that showed star maps with different colored dots marking various locations. Throughout galactic history, we have encountered 17 other species that displayed behavioral patterns similar to your own. We called them the scattered ones. The display showed images of different alien species. Some looked almost human. Others were completely alien, but all had something in their eyes that reminded Jake of his own crew. A spark of curiosity and defiance. They were all like us? Dr. Warren asked. In the ways that matter, yes, Quindar replied. They refused to accept single-purpose existence. They displayed contradictory behaviors. They adapted constantly to new situations. They asked questions that had no clear answers. Engineer Ryan Bell leaned forward. What happened to them? The old historian's expression grew sad. They all disappeared within a few centuries of achieving spaceflight capability. The official records state that they destroyed themselves through internal conflict and social chaos. But you don't believe that, Jake said. It wasn't a question. Quindar shook his head slowly. I have spent 3,000 years studying the ruins of these civilizations. What I found does not match the official explanations. The holographic display changed to show archaeological sites on different worlds. Jake saw the remains of great cities, advanced technology, and artwork that spoke of peaceful, creative societies. Take the Drakmor, for example, Quindar continued. They vanished only 3,000 years ago. According to Alliance records, they fell into civil war and destroyed themselves. But when I examined their homeworld, I found something different. The display showed ruins of what must have been beautiful cities. The architecture was strange but clearly advanced. There were no signs of weapons damage or destruction from warfare. Their technology was more advanced than ours in many ways. Quindar explained. They had developed early forms of dimensional travel. Their art shows a society that celebrated diversity and change. Their libraries contained philosophy about the importance of growth and adaptation. Communications Officer Danny Foster spoke up. If they didn't destroy themselves, what happened to them? Before Quindar could answer, the room's communication system activated. Alliance historian Quindar, please report to the council chamber immediately, came an official voice. Zethkar looked alarmed. They must have detected that you accessed the restricted files. You should go. The old historian stood slowly. Before I leave, there is something else you must know. The disappearances follow a pattern. Each species was given a choice by the Alliance. Accept modification to fit into our system, or return to their homeworld and never travel to space again. Jake felt his heart pounding. And if they refused, both options? Quindar's ancient eyes met Jake's. Find the answer to that question, Commander Morrison, but be careful who you trust. With that, the historian left the room. Zethkar remained behind, his crystal features showing clear distress. Is it true? Dr. Warren asked the ambassador. Did the Alliance give those species the same choice they're preparing to give us? Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. The Alliance has always sought stability above all else. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the greater good. Security Chief Price stood up. That's not an answer. It is the only answer I can give you, Zethkar replied. The Council will make their decision about humanity soon. I suggest you prepare for whatever choice they offer you. After the ambassador left, Jake gathered his crew in their private quarters. We need to find out what really happened to those other species, he said. How? Engineer Bell asked. They're watching everything we do. Not everything, Communications Officer Foster said quietly. I've been monitoring their communication networks. There are gaps in their security during shift changes. If we're careful, we might be able to access their historical databases. Over the next 3 days, the crew worked together to investigate the truth about the scattered ones. Foster used his technical skills to break into restricted communication channels during security gaps. Dr. Warren analyzed the scientific data they found about the vanished species. Security Chief Price watched for signs that they had been discovered. What they found was disturbing. The Alliance had detailed records about each of the 17 vanished species. The reports showed a consistent pattern. Each species was studied, tested, and eventually given the same choice. Accept genetic and cultural modification to fit into the Alliance system, or agree to permanent isolation on their homeworld. But the most shocking discovery came when Foster accessed encrypted files that were supposed to be deleted long ago. These files contained the real history of what happened to species that refused both options. Look at this, Foster said, showing the others a holographic display in their quarters. The Vecti chose isolation and returned to their homeworld, but 6 months later, Alliance ships blockaded their system. No one was allowed in or out. The files showed that the Alliance had slowly cut off all contact with the isolated species. They were denied access to galactic trade, communication networks, and technological advancement. Over time, their civilization stagnated and eventually collapsed. They didn't destroy themselves, Dr. Warren said quietly. The Alliance starved them of everything they needed to grow and survive. Engineer Bell found even worse information. Some species tried to resist. The Heth Corps refused the choice entirely and attempted to establish their own alliance with non-member species. Alliance records show they were designated as a destabilizing influence and dealt with accordingly. What does that mean? Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew. It means they were wiped out, Security Chief Price said grimly. The Alliance destroyed them to protect their precious stability. The crew sat in stunned silence as the full scope of what they had discovered became clear. The Galactic Alliance, which presented itself as a peaceful confederation of species, had systematically eliminated or destroyed every civilization that refused to conform to their rigid system. We have to get this information back to Earth, Jake said. Humanity needs to know what we're really dealing with. Foster shook his head. All communications are monitored. There's no way to send a message without them knowing. Then we have to find another way, Dr. Warren said. Maybe we can hide the information somehow, or find allies among the Alliance species. Are there any allies? Bell asked. Every species we've met seems completely committed to the Alliance way of thinking. Jake thought about the various aliens they had encountered. Most seemed genuinely convinced that the Alliance system was perfect, but he remembered seeing doubt in some of their eyes when they observed human behavior. There might be, he said slowly. Some of the younger Alliance members seemed curious about us rather than just afraid. Maybe they're not all completely happy with the way things are. Before anyone could respond, the door to their quarters opened. Ambassador Zethkar entered with 2 other Alliance officials Jake didn't recognize. Commander Morrison, Zethkar said formally. The Alliance Council has reached a preliminary decision about humanity's future. You and your crew are to report to the Council chamber immediately. Jake looked at his crew and saw his own fear reflected in their faces. They had learned too much about the Alliance's real methods, and now they were about to face the same choice that had destroyed 17 other species. "Understood, Ambassador," Jake replied. "We'll be right there." As they prepared to leave their quarters, possibly for the last time, Jake whispered to his crew, "Whatever happens in there, remember what we learned. Humanity deserves to know the truth about this alliance." They walked toward the council chamber, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just their own fate, but the future of every human being on Earth. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in a perfect circle around a central platform. Representatives from all 12 Alliance species sat in their designated positions, watching as Commander Jake Morrison and his crew entered the room. The air felt thick and heavy, and Jake could sense the tension in every alien face that looked down at them. Ambassador Zethkar led the humans to the center platform. "Commander Morrison, you and your crew will hear the Alliance Council's decision regarding humanity's future among the stars." High Chancellor Vexmar, a tall Scardan with dark scales, stood up from the largest seat. His reptilian voice echoed through the chamber. "Humans of Earth, after extensive study and deliberation, the Alliance has reached a conclusion about your species." Jake stood straight, trying to hide his fear. Beside him, Dr. Lisa Warren, Security Chief Amanda Price, Engineer Ryan Bell, and Communications Officer Danny Foster waited silently. "Your behavioral patterns present a significant challenge to galactic stability," the High Chancellor continued. "However, the Alliance recognizes that your species possesses certain useful capabilities." A Kreeth representative clicked its mandibles loudly. "The humans demonstrate problem-solving abilities that exceed normal parameters. This could be valuable, if properly directed. Therefore," High Chancellor Vexmar announced, "the Alliance offers humanity a place in our civilization. You will serve as our designated protectors and enforcers. Your aggressive tendencies and adaptability will be channeled into maintaining order throughout Alliance space." Jake felt his stomach drop. "What exactly does that mean?" "A Velthari Council," member answered, her crystal features glowing softly. "You will undergo genetic and psychological modification to enhance your protective instincts while suppressing your chaotic tendencies. Your role will be clearly defined and permanent." "Genetic modification?" Dr. Warren stepped forward. "You want to change what we are?" "It is necessary," the High Chancellor replied. "Your species displays too many conflicting traits. You must be refined to serve a single purpose, just as all Alliance species have done." Security Chief Price clenched her fists. "And if we refuse?" The chamber fell silent. High Chancellor Vexmar's cold reptilian eyes fixed on her. "Then you will return to your solar system and remain there permanently. All contact with galactic civilization will be severed." "That's not really a choice," Jake said angrily. "You're asking us to stop being human or be prisoners on our own world." Before any Alliance member could respond, young Sam Mitchell burst into the chamber. The communications officer was breathing hard and looked terrified. "Commander," Mitchell said, ignoring the shocked aliens around him, "I found something in their databases. You need to see this." Ambassador Zethkar stood up quickly. "This human should not be here. Guards, remove him." "Wait," Jake said firmly. "Let him speak." Mitchell activated a small device that projected holographic data into the center of the chamber. "I accessed their deepest archives. The Alliance didn't just offer those other species a choice. When they refused both options, the Alliance eliminated them. The hologram showed detailed military reports, supply lists, and battle plans. Jake saw records of Alliance fleets blockading star systems, cutting off trade routes, and in some cases, direct military action against species that tried to resist. The Hethcore tried to form their own alliance," Mitchell continued, his voice shaking but determined. "The Alliance destroyed their entire civilization, 17 billion beings wiped out because they wouldn't conform." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some Alliance members shouted in their various languages. Others sat in stunned silence. High Chancellor Vexmar's scales turned a darker color, which Jake guessed meant anger. "These records are classified for good reason," the High Chancellor said, his voice dangerous. They represent difficult decisions made for the greater good of galactic civilization. Greater good? Dr. Warren's voice was filled with disgust. You committed genocide against species that just wanted to be themselves. A new voice spoke from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. Not all of us agreed with those decisions. Everyone turned to see a figure stepping into the light. It was a young Velthari that Jake had never seen before. Her crystal features were dimmer than Zethkar's, suggesting she was much younger. Crystallara, you should not be here, Zethkar said urgently. I am a council member by birthright. Crystallara replied, and I have been listening to these proceedings with growing concern. She walked toward the center platform, her crystal body making soft musical sounds with each step. I have spent years studying the histories of the vanished species, their art, their philosophy, their scientific achievements. We destroyed civilizations that might have enriched our galaxy beyond measure. High Chancellor Vexmar's voice was cold. They were a threat to stability. Were they? Crystallara challenged. Or were they a threat to our control? Other young Alliance members began standing up around the chamber. A junior Aonki spoke next. I have wondered why our technological advancement has been so slow. Perhaps it is because we eliminated the very species that might have brought new ideas. A young Softail added, My generation has never known the emotional richness that the historical records describe. We have gained stability, but lost something essential. Jake watched in amazement as what appeared to be a generational divide in the Alliance became visible. The older established leaders looked angry and concerned, while younger members seemed curious and questioning. This is exactly the kind of chaos that the Stability Doctrine was designed to prevent, High Chancellor Vexmar declared. Questioning established order leads to conflict and destruction. Does it? Jake stepped forward, seeing an opportunity. Look around this chamber. Your younger members are thinking for themselves, asking questions, challenging assumptions. Is that really chaos or is that growth? Crystallara turned to face Jake directly. Commander Morrison, what would humanity do if faced with our choice? Jake looked at his crew, then back at the young Velthari. We'd probably argue about it, for hours consider every possible option, and then find a third alternative that nobody had thought of before. That is precisely the problem, High Chancellor Vexmar said. Your species refuses to accept necessary limitations. Maybe limitations aren't necessary, Dr. Warren said. Maybe the problem isn't with species like us. Maybe the problem is with a system that's so afraid of change that it destroys anything different. Engineer Bell stepped forward. In the past few months, we've helped solve 3 technical problems that your specialists couldn't figure out. We did it by combining approaches from different fields and thinking outside the established methods. And we did it without modifying our basic nature, Security Chief Price added. We stayed human and still contributed something valuable. A young Zixori representative spoke with several voices. We have wondered why certain problems remain unsolved despite centuries of specialist attention. Perhaps fresh perspectives are needed. High Chancellor Vexmar looked around the chamber with growing alarm. You are all forgetting the lessons of history. Diversity leads to conflict. Change leads to chaos. The Stability Doctrine has given us 10,000 years of peace. At what cost, Crystallara asked. 10,000 years of stagnation, 10,000 years of fear, 10,000 years of destroying anyone who dared to be different. Jake saw his chance. What if there was another way? What if instead of forcing everyone to be the same, you allowed different species to work together while staying true to their nature? Impossible, the High Chancellor declared. Such a system would collapse into war within generations. Would it? Dr. Warren challenged. Our crew works that way. We're all different, we disagree constantly, we argue and debate and sometimes get angry with each other. But we also accomplish things that none of us could do alone. Communications. Officer Foster spoke up. The galaxy is big enough for different kinds of minds. Maybe that's not a weakness, maybe that's a strength. The chamber fell silent as Alliance members considered these words. Jake could see the internal struggle on many faces, especially among the younger representatives. Finally, Crystallara spoke again. I propose that the Alliance consider a new approach. Instead of requiring humanity to conform to our system, let us experiment with partnership. Let them remain themselves while working with us. Absolutely not, High Chancellor Vexmar said, firmly. The risks are too great. The risks of what? Crystallara asked. Learning something new? Growing beyond our current limitations? Becoming more than we are? As the debate continued, Jake realized that humanity's fate now depended not just on their own choices, but on whether the Alliance itself was ready to change after 10,000 years of rigid stability. The future of both humanity and the Alliance hung in the balance. The Alliance Council chamber had been in heated debate for 3 hours. Commander Jake Morrison watched as centuries of rigid thinking clashed with new ideas. Young Alliance members argued with their elders while the fate of humanity hung in the balance. High Chancellor Vexmar stood tall, his dark scales reflecting the chamber lights. Enough, he declared, his voice cutting through the noise. This debate proves exactly why the stability doctrine exists. Look at the chaos you have created simply by questioning established order. Crystallara, the young Velthari, stepped forward. This is not chaos, High Chancellor. This is growth. This is what we have been missing for 10,000 years. Growth leads to conflict, the High Chancellor replied firmly. The historical records are clear. Every species that embraced change eventually destroyed itself. Dr. Lisa Warren stood up from the human platform. With respect, High Chancellor, you destroyed them. They didn't destroy themselves. Before the High Chancellor could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Red lights flashed as an emergency announcement echoed through the chamber. All council members report to emergency stations. Unknown energy phenomenon detected in the Kepler sector. Multiple star systems showing gravitational distortions. Ambassador Zethkar quickly activated his communication device. Control. What is the nature of this emergency? A panicked voice responded. Ambassador, we're detecting massive space-time disruptions spreading across 12 systems. Planets are being pulled out of orbit. We've lost contact with 3 colonies. High Chancellor Vexmar looked around the chamber. Council members, report to your designated crisis stations. This meeting is suspended. Wait, Jake called out. Maybe we can help. The High Chancellor turned to him with cold eyes. Humans have no assigned role in Alliance emergency procedures. You will remain here. As Alliance members hurried to their stations, Jake gathered his crew on the platform. We can't just sit here while people are dying. Communications Officer Danny Foster activated his portable scanner. Commander, I'm picking up the same energy signatures from the affected systems. Whatever's causing this, it's not natural. Engineer Ryan Bell studied Foster's readings. This looks like some kind of dimensional rift. The gravitational fields are all wrong. Dr. Warren looked at the data streaming across the chamber's displays. The Alliance response teams are working in their specialized groups. The Velthari are handling calculations, the Kreeth are managing logistics, the Softel are coordinating evacuation efforts. But they're not talking to each other. Jake watched the organized chaos on the screens. Each species was working efficiently, within their assigned roles, but there was no coordination between different specialties. They're not going to solve this, he realized. Security Chief Amanda Price pointed to one of the displays. Look at that. The Velthari calculated that they need to redirect the energy flow, but the Queltar energy specialists are working on a completely different solution. They're not sharing information. Young Sam Mitchell ran over from a communication station. Commander, I've been monitoring their channels. Each species is reporting to their own leadership instead of coordinating with the others. They have 5 different plans and no way to choose between them. Jake made a decision. Foster, can you patch into their communication network? Already working on it, sir. Within minutes, Jake found himself connected to the Alliance Emergency Command Center. High Chancellor Vexmar's image appeared on the screen, looking frustrated and angry. Commander Morrison, you are not authorized to interfere with Alliance operations. High Chancellor, with respect, your operations aren't working. You have multiple teams working on separate solutions with no coordination. This crisis requires all your specialties working together. That is not how the Alliance functions, the High Chancellor replied. Each species handles their designated responsibilities. And that's why you're failing, Dr. Warren interrupted. This isn't a normal problem that fits into your predetermined categories. It requires creative thinking and cooperation between different approaches. On the screens around the chamber, the situation was getting worse. More systems were reporting gravitational anomalies. Evacuation ships were struggling to reach threatened colonies because no one could predict where the distortions would appear next. Crystalera approached the communication station. High Chancellor, perhaps we should listen to their suggestions. Our current approach is not succeeding. Absolutely not, the High Chancellor replied. We will solve this crisis using established procedures. Jake watched the disaster unfold for another hour. The Alliance teams were competent within their specialties, but the crisis required something they couldn't provide: the ability to think outside their assigned roles. Finally, Jake turned to his crew. We're going to help whether they want us to or not. How? Engineer Bell asked. We don't have access to their systems or their data. We don't need their systems, Dr. Warren said, understanding Jake's plan. We need their people. Jake activated the general communication channel, broadcasting to all Alliance emergency teams simultaneously. This is Commander Morrison of the OR, Human Vessel Horizon's Edge. I'm speaking to all Alliance personnel working on the current crisis. High Chancellor Vexmar's angry voice cut in immediately. Commander, cease this unauthorized communication. Jake ignored him and continued. Your individual teams have developed partial solutions to this problem. The Velthari have calculated energy flow patterns. The Queltar understand energy manipulation. The Kreeth have logistics data. The Softel know which populations need evacuation priority. But you're not sharing this information. Voices began responding from different Alliance teams across the galaxy. A Velthari scientist said, We have been instructed to report only to Velthari Command, and we've been told to work only within Kreeth protocols, added a Kreeth logistics officer. Jake looked at his crew, then back at the communication screen. What if you ignored those instructions? What if you shared your data directly with each other? The communication channels fell silent. High Chancellor Vexmar's voice was dangerous when he spoke. Commander Morrison, you are encouraging Alliance personnel to violate fundamental protocols. I'm encouraging them to save lives, Jake replied. Your protocols are getting people killed. Crystalera stepped closer to the communication station. High Chancellor, regulations can be adjusted. Lives cannot be restored. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then a young Queltar energy specialist voice came through the communication system. Velthari Science Team 7, I am transmitting my energy flow data to you directly. Received, replied a Velthari scientist. This data shows energy patterns we had not detected. Transmitting our gravitational calculations to you. High Chancellor Vexmar shouted. All personnel will return to established protocols immediately. But it was too late. Across the galaxy, young Alliance members began sharing data directly with each other. The humans coordinated the information exchange, helping different specialties understand each other's findings. Dr. Warren worked with Velthari scientists to analyze the dimensional rifts. Engineer Bell helped Queltar energy specialists understand human approaches to power management. Communications Officer Foster coordinated data sharing between teams that had never communicated before. Within 2 hours, the combined teams had developed a solution that no single species could have created alone. It required Velthari calculations, Queltar energy manipulation, Kreeth logistics, and human adaptability to coordinate everything. The plan worked. The dimensional rifts were sealed, the gravitational distortions stopped, and the threatened star systems were saved. When the crisis was over, the Alliance Council reconvened. High Chancellor Vexmar looked older and more tired than before. The emergency has been resolved, he announced. However, the methods used violated every protocol that has maintained Alliance stability for millennia. Crystallara stood up. The methods used saved billions of lives. Perhaps our protocols need to change. Jake stepped forward. High Chancellor, we don't want to destroy your alliance. We want to help it grow. Today proved that different species working together can accomplish things that none could do alone. But at what cost? The High Chancellor asked. You have encouraged our people to question authority, to ignore established procedures. This will lead to chaos. Dr. Warren smiled. No, it will lead to progress. Your young people just learned that they can think for themselves and still work together effectively. That's not chaos. That's evolution. Around the chamber, Jake could see the faces of Alliance members. The older ones looked uncertain and afraid, but the younger ones looked excited and hopeful. High Chancellor Vexmar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. The Alliance Council will consider a new arrangement with humanity. Not membership, under our current system, but partnership. A trial period to see if cooperation between different approaches can work without destroying stability. Jake felt relief flood through him. We accept. But understand, the High Chancellor continued, this is unprecedented. If this experiment fails, if chaos returns to our galaxy, the consequences will be severe. Crystallara spoke up. High Chancellor, chaos already returned to our galaxy today, and instead of destroying us, it taught us something new. Perhaps that is not